What's going on, everyone? So welcome to this latest video. This is my top 10 movies that everyone likes that I dislike video, according to Rotten Tomatoes audience ratings. So I was challenged by Sergey of Skynet Gen, who also did a top 10 movies that everyone likes that I dislike video, and he challenged me in that video. So obviously I accepted that challenge, and at the end of this video, I will be challenging a fellow YouTuber in doing the same. So all that explanation aside, let's get started. So, my number 10 is Kill Bill Volume 1. Now, Kill Bill Volume 1 has an 81% based on the audience rating, and I've never been a fan of this movie. I've seen it twice. The first time was about 6 years ago, and the second time was a couple years ago, just to kind of, maybe give it a refresher, and maybe I would appreciate it more. But no, I still think that this movie is quite disappointing for myself. It's not even the expectations, it's just the fact that it's an empty calories movie, and I can appreciate empty calories movies to an extent, but I feel like Volume 2 is a lot better in terms of just overall story, plot, and even action. Don't get me wrong, there's some pretty crazy action scenes in Volume 1, and they're fine, but I just overall didn't really care what was going on. The bride is someone that I cared about more in the second part than the first part, and the first part for me, I get why so many people like it, and I can completely understand and have a healthy debate about that with someone. But for me personally, I just was left pretty cold with this movie, and so that's my number 10. My number 9 is The Fifth Element, which has an 86% audience rating. The Fifth Element, I wasn't sure going into it what I would think. I like science fiction movies, I like futuristic movies, and I like movies that seem like they're more than they would appear to be under the surface. And I feel like The Fifth Element, for a lot of people, that's how it is. For me personally, it was a very surface-based movie. And even if you look at it in terms of like being very superficial, I wasn't really entertained by this movie, unfortunately. I appreciate the makeup and some of the special effects, but overall I just felt like story, characters, dialogue was just making me want a lot more than what the movie was, clearly trying to offer. And again, if I want to watch a 90s science fiction movie, I'll probably pick something like Dark City over this. The director's cut, obviously. But still, I left The Fifth Element when I saw it a couple years ago very cold. Maybe I would give it a second chance. Probably not, though. So that was my number 9. My number 8 is Mallrats, which has an 82%. Here's the thing with Mallrats. I don't absolutely hate this movie, but I was very disappointed by this movie. It is a part of, obviously, Kevin Smith's universe, and it's definitely one of the ones that I'm not a big fan of. When I watched this movie, I was left again, the theory is with all these movies that I've said so far, cold. I didn't really laugh at Mallrats. I felt like the acting was okay, I suppose, but there's just a lot of cliches that even in the 90s this movie really exploited, and it didn't really do anything new, unfortunately. I get why it has a cult following for sure, but it just was a movie that, again, I didn't really feel anything. I didn't laugh. I felt like the dramatic beats also didn't work. So for me, the genres that it was attempting just didn't land for me, unfortunately. That's why it's my number 8. My number 7 is The Upside, which also has an 82%. Here's the thing with The Upside. It's not a bad movie. It's not. I think I gave it like a 2.5 out of 5. It's not bad. It's just I saw The Untouchables, not the one with Robert De Niro. The Untouchables is a French movie. I believe it came out in 2011, and The Upside pretty much is the same exact story. The difference is The Untouchables does a really good job of fleshing out the characters, and also it feels a lot more grounded in reality, as well as the chemistry is fantastic. Don't get me wrong, Bryan Cranston and Kevin Hart are really good together, but they don't have that naturalistic chemistry the way that it was in The Untouchables, as well as I felt like there was more breathing room for that. I felt like The Upside had to follow a lot of the cliches of the genre and not really follow what The Untouchables did in the first place. The Untouchables is a good movie. I would definitely recommend that, and I think maybe if I didn't see The Untouchables, The Upside I would give more of a pass, but unfortunately, I was left wanting more, and I know why it has an 82% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's because a lot of Americans probably watched it and didn't know that there was that it's a remake. So, makes sense. So that is my number 7. My number 6 is Star Wars: Rise of Skywalker. Yeah, you guys knew that this would be on the list. This has an 86% on Rotten Tomatoes with the audience rating. That is outlandish, if you ask me. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of division between critics and audiences, and this is definitely a case of that. But I wanted to walk out of the movies when I was watching Rise of Skywalker, like literally the opening credit crawl. I was like, what? Again, I'm not going to spoil the movie, but I'm like, so-and-so is alive? You've got to be kidding me. And then it just kind of got worse and worse. I was like, oh man, this is bad. I wanted to walk out so many times with that movie, but I didn't. And if they do continue making Star Wars movies, which based on the box office, probably will happen, but I'm still kind of like, oh man, this movie left me wanting so much more. It was trying to fix all the issues of the previous movie, whilst at the same time retconning it, whilst at the same time tying in from episode 7. So it was trying to do too much, but also too little. And there's just a lot of laughable scenes in that weren't intentional, mind you. Like the ending scene, I don't know, man. This movie really, really wasn't good. I'd rather watch Catch than this movie. There, I said it. Catch was terrible. So that was my number 6. My number 5 is another 2019 movie, and that's Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. This has a 95% audience score. Holy cow. So I guess everyone that saw this movie, pretty much in terms of audiences, loved this movie. I didn't. This was, again, kind of like Rise of Skywalker, where I wanted to walk out of this movie. I genuinely did. Because there was just so many boneheaded things that the directing was trying to accomplish that just failed mightily. There are so many cliches of this movie. There are so many trite and contrived moments where you just have to wonder, like, so they're doing these things because of the screenplay telling them to, right? And not actually like, hey, this is something that based on the actions of the character, it makes sense. That's the only sense I can make. And also, it seemed like it was a kiddie version of Game of Thrones Season 8. And I like season 8 of Game of Thrones. Like, say what you will about it, but I do like it. But they were trying to do that in Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, like the kiddie version. It just didn't work. It was trying to be all dark and gritty, but it was also trying to be all fun. And I did not think the tones really matched at all. I hate this movie. That's why it's a little bit higher up than even Rise of Skywalker. So that's my number 5. My number 4 is Fast and Furious 6, which has an 84%. Reason why I had this one and not 7, 8, 9, because 7, there's another video actually with LC Screen Talk where I talked about how I didn't like Furious 7 and also my James Bond ranking list. So I'm like, I won't focus on that. I'm like, where did it begin where I really started not liking the franchise? And Fast and Furious 6 with an 84%, I was like, this is where it started. Because Fast 5 I liked. I did like it when I saw it as a teenager, and then I remember being very excited for the 6th entry in theaters and seeing it and being very disappointed. That's an experience that I definitely remember because I remember my one friend saw it with me and he really enjoyed it, but I didn't like it. It was one of the first movies like 7, 8 years ago that I wanted to leave the theater. I wanted to leave it, but obviously I didn't, but still. So that with, again, all the cliches of this franchise, it just melded together in this, and then also it was changing the course of what the franchise was going to be. And I don't know, I really was left cold with this one as well. Again, I understand why people might like this one because, there is a lot of action. It's got all the things that people of the franchise love. It's just for me personally, I want to see a franchise grow and not just kind of like stay the same. So that's why it's my number 4. My number 3 is, oh boy, you guys ready for this? My number 3 is Unplanned, which has a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. For those of you who don't know, Unplanned is a anti-abortion movie. It's a Christian PureFlix movie. A little bit of background, PureFlix is like a Christian company where they make movies, but they don't really care about the quality. They care about getting a message across. And in some instances that would be fine, but it's very heavy-handed when they hit you over the head with these messages. I will say this, I did review this movie on my channel, and I would highly recommend you check out the review, specifically the comment section. It is gold. I promise you, it is gold. That's all I'm going to say. Just watch my review for the movie, and then look at the comments, and you'll be like, wow, it's crazy, man. Check it out. So now we get to the top 2. Now, number 2, I'm not going to lie, Sergey gave me guidelines. He said 80% or higher for all like these top 10 entries. I broke my rule, Sergey, for my number 2. My number 2 is Bad Boys 2, which has a 78%. Close enough, right? I had to put this on there. I didn't want to put the latest Bad Boys because the latest Bad Boys movie I gave a 2.5 out of 5, and I know some of these entries I did give that, but the newest Bad Boys wasn't bad, especially compared to the other two movies. Bad Boys 2, though, left me with a headache. And when a movie does that, it tells you a lot. This is a movie that is mindless, and I get it, it's trying to be, but the chemistry is just mediocre at best. The action is very frantic, you can't tell what's going on. The score, the soundtrack choices just are very like, oh my goodness. The themes and messages are very offensive and really haven't aged well. The pacing, the length, it's too much. It really is too much. And I know like I sound like an old man talking about this movie, but Bad Boys 2 is what I don't want in an action movie. I want coherence. I want you to be able to tell what's going on. And Bad Boys 2, it's not able to do that. It really isn't. And I get it that it's a movie that has like a cult following at this point, but I really do wish that this movie like was hated by a lot of people, unfortunately. But it's not, obviously. It's a 78, so a lot of people really seem to dig this movie. I personally don't, though, but what are you going to do? So that's my number 2. And my number 1, this is going to get a lot of people angry. My number 1 is the Boondock Saints, which has a 91%. Look, the Boondock Saints, you know, you look at the critics rating and it's pretty bad. It's like a 20% on Rotten Tomatoes. The audiences love this movie. This movie has a huge cult following now. In fact, so much so there was a sequel. I didn't like this movie. I agree with the consensus of the critics on Rotten Tomatoes. I think this movie's too much of an imitator of Tarantino. And I get it, in the 1990s there was a lot of Tarantino imitators, but you know, Guy Ritchie made like Snatch, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, and they were imitators, but they worked, you know, or like Transpotting. These are movies that imitated slightly, but they made it their own. I just felt too much like the Boondock Saints took way too much from the Tarantino formula and wasn't really able to make it its own, other than the fact that it's a bunch of guys like going around with, you know, this morality code. It was a little too much for me. Like, and when I say too much, I just mean simply that I couldn't really buy a lot of the things that were going on. I get that it was over the top, but a lot of the stuff I just couldn't buy, and also I really don't think the technical aspects of this movie are anything to write home about. But I know that that's going to get a lot of people angry because, again, I know it has a cult following, but not a big fan of the movie. I actually don't like it at all. That's why it's my number 1. But guys, that was my top 10 movies that everyone likes, that I dislike based on Rotten Tomatoes audience score. Obviously, I was challenged by Sergey. Thank you very much for challenging me, Sergey, at Skynet Gen, who I'm going to challenge, and I know I work with him all the time, but I'm going to challenge Larry of LC Screen Talk. Larry, hope you're watching this video because you've just been challenged. So, guys, what's your top 10 movies that everyone likes that you dislike? In the comment section down below, let me know. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget the subscription, notification bell, and I'll catch you guys later.